W3I, but we do operate somewhat independent. We do have our own third-party development studios that we work with a whole bunch of other things. But we have enough time. We'll get into that at the end of the presentation here. What we're going to talk a little bit about today, or a lot about today, depending on how you look at it, is freemium gaming. We're going to look at not only kind of the core mechanics of developing video games in a freemium model, specifically mobile. We're also looking at the business aspect of it as well. So you try to get a good understanding of both business and gaming as it relates to freemium mobile gaming. Jimmy's also going to speak in a portion of this. He's going to talk a little bit about the specific gaming aspects of this. So feel free to ask him some additional questions as we go through this. I'm going to try to power through this as much as I can. There's a lot of stuff to cover. If I'm going too fast, tell me, or if you guys have specific questions, just raise your hand. Obviously, we're a small group here. So, I'm going to go through the overview. Quick intro to myself, a little bit of background. Helped get a ringtone startup off the ground, sold to a million-year-old greeting card company, American Greetings. Worked at a video game company called THG Wireless, and now working to manage recharge studios. So what is a freemium game? You know, a lot of people think freemium games are just free games that you can do stuff with, and somehow they make money, or they just simply upsell a full version of a paid game. That's really not true. There's a pretty complex business behind freemium, a lot more so than I think a lot of people think. There's a lot of details to that, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So really, what is freemium? It includes a lot of things. First of all, that you need to kind of see a freemium game. Core piece of that is free to download and play. You can play it as much as you want. You can play it as little as you want. It doesn't cost you anything to play it. But however, there's a whole bunch of other things that you can do inside the game. This is really starting to take off over the last couple of years, specifically in mobile. Other pieces of freemium, we'll get into this, but virtual goods, in-app purchases, economies, currencies, cash transaction, ad revenues, game mechanics, social interactivity, the list goes on and on and on and on. There's a lot of different pieces with freemium, and we'll get into that. So, what is freemium game? I talked about this a little bit, but freemium games is, I'd say, 50% game design and 50% business intelligence and truly understanding the whole business behind a freemium game. A lot of people think, it's just you go out and get, build an idea, put an artist together and put a developer together, you can make some cool things, and you got Pac-Man running around, it's a great game, people buy it. No, it's not really the case with freemium. Freemium, we say, is it's its own business entity. Every freemium game out there, right, specifically on iOS and social, can be viewed as independent businesses, or subsections and verticals of the business. So, history. I'm not going to go too much into the history of freemium games. We go back pretty far, actually, 20, 30 years, depending on how you want to really look at it. But really, the whole idea behind free mobile games is taking simple mobile game components, and bringing in a lot of these emerging social components, where there's virtual economies and so on and so forth. One of the big drivers, I think, why everybody's starting to see the value with the social game, or freemium games on mobile. In 2008, Apple allowed in-app purchases, and that really helped drive a lot of the core components, which we'll talk about in a minute, to supporting a freemium game business in mobile. So a combination of mobile games starting to come up the ranks, social games and virtual economies building scale on Facebook, on the web, so on and so forth. Big MMOs taking millions and millions of hours of people's time these days, kind of converging into one. So really, what does it get to? Freemium, what we call Dolphin Play. If you haven't downloaded it, you need to download Dolphin Play if you got an iPhone. So another one wants to plug there, but essentially that's what it is. We develop freemium games as a recharge title for download. Market overview. Talked a little bit about the market size and market overview. On IHS, predicted by to 2011, you're aware now, obviously, about a $4 billion industry. Mobile apps are going to be. So mobile app industry, $4 billion in 2011. It's going to continue to scale, double and triple in some cases year over year until 2014. That's what most people are expecting as the growth of this. Key driver of this business growth is going to be freemium. And part of the big reason behind that is because app stores are getting crowded. Anybody's trying to release your own app in the App Store, or if you know anybody that's doing it, if you know companies who do watched when you saw marketing plans go up, they try to get in the App Store and so on and so forth. There's so much noise, there's so many things going out there. So one of the biggest strategies to bring products to market is go free. And you can get as much distribution as you can. The key would be to optimize those eyeballs that you get over the right. Freemium purchases are, according to IHS accounting, will account for around half of all North American app revenues by 2014. So you're talking half of revenues. 2014 is a significant portion. It's very different from how I think content creators, specifically video game companies today, you look to see some of the big players, and we'll look at this in a minute. But if you think, okay, well, EA, THQ, and Ubisoft, and how these guys come into market, where are they at? These big video game companies, they're behind the ball. They don't really realize this. You see the core freemium game players today. We'll go through that in a minute. What does it mean to, we talked about 2014, where's the market going? It's estimated that freemium game content in mobile is going to be about a $10 billion industry by 2014. There's a lot of different estimations thrown in there. It's actually, they said it would be about $14 billion, but we'll see if we actually get there. I have my doubts, and yes, that is it's a huge industry. So if you're thinking about getting mobile content, freemium is certainly something to consider. A little bit more about the marketplace as it currently stands today. Obviously, everybody knows Android and iPhone, the big battles of content and app consumption. If you look at other platforms, Symfony, Java grew, Windows Mobile, there really isn't a whole lot of traction there comparable to the amount of install base to the app downloads. And now, I think this is actually probably a little bit older than we want it to be. Android's market share, actually, it's in shot. This is app downloads per day. So market share within Android is overtaking iPhone, which you guys have a smartphone, I'm sure paying close attention to. So take a look at the marketplace within Android and iOS, the two big marketplaces today. What are the comparisons as far as the top grossing freemium game titles? So if you look to see the total count in the top, anywhere from 10 to 400, you can see that there are a significant amount of freemium titles that are top grossing. So you're talking free apps that are downloaded for free, are top grossing in the respective chart rankings. So 5 out of the top 10 grossing applications in Android are free, 6 out of the top 10 in iOS. That fluctuates there, and I've seen up to 9 out of the top 10 in iOS, depending on the day, really. But I mean, this is overtaking the industry without a doubt, and there are still some pretty big comparisons between the Android and iOS and the release of freemium games. But as we know, Android gaming is growing significantly. Just a quick review of kind of the top apps right now. Everybody's heard of Angry Birds. Actually, I've got, you look to see, 3, 4, 5, all the way through 25. You can see kind of the variance here of these top grossing applications specific to the iOS App Store at the end of March here. But again, definitely taking over the marketplace and top grossing. Again, one of the top, 4 out of the top 5 apps on the iOS store are free. Pretty compelling there. We did a little market overview internally within research to kind of see what how much revenue is being generated, or that we think is being generated by the top companies, the top freemium game companies a month. We estimated NGMoco, and this is around March, about a $3 million industry just within iOS. So these, the top guys are making significant cash. And if you go down the list, this is I think the top 25. You Dream Cortex, which they're growing pretty fast, anyways. But $282,000 a month. I mean, these are relatively, I'm not going to say simple games, but certainly achievable by most people's standards, I think, with the right amount of secret sauce. So that's kind of market overview. I want to go into the core fundamentals of freemium, and trying to put together this presentation. I want to say, okay, what's the best way that we can kind of represent what a freemium game is? What are truly the fundamentals of what a freemium game consists of? And there's 3 things. Sources and sinks, the compulsion loop, and the virtual economy. And this essentially are all the tricks and the levers that are used to create an environment for a freemium game. And we'll go through these individually. So, if you think sources and sinks, defining a sink as an investment. Somebody, a user, making some investment. That investment can be waiting 2 days, it can be waiting 30 seconds. It can be spending a premium or a secondary currency to purchase something within the game that will allow them to achieve things later on. The source would be value creation, meaning that actually waiting a certain amount of time to have a week created or whatever would actually create value that you can then reapply as investment inside of the game. So examples of a sink: purchase wheat, seeds to grow wheat. I think most people are familiar with Farm Bill. And you can buy those seeds and plant a plot, wait over time, and suddenly you've got wheat. The source would be waiting 5 minutes for that wheat to grow. And essentially, think about that as source and sinks as a core concept within freemium games. Now, we get further down into this idea of sources and sinks within a game and look and try to define something that's called the compulsion loop. And the compulsion loop simply references the mind or the mentality that you have to kind of keep going and going and going and going and going. It's this compulsion that I spend more, I get more, I spend more, I get more. And suddenly people get engulfed with taking action within an environment, with a source and sink environment, and essentially, like I said, you have the compulsion loop. Now, this is a very simple representation. We can take this further and actually show what a real sample compulsion loop is. And this is a sample compulsion loop from it's basically a horse simulation game that represents and showcases the compulsion loop as it relates to different elements within each game. Simply put, you can spend money, which you learned at an earlier stage, to train and customize your horse. You can also customize your farm, which will ultimately give you horse skills and farm services, which can then be applied to take activities or make competitions, visit other services, do other actions by applying those skills and those services, which then ultimately will get you more currency or in-game money, which then can ultimately be applied. And there's lots of different things going on here, but essentially that's the concept of what the true compulsion loop is. And within the compulsion loop, you can identify lots of different sources and sinks in miniature frameworks of sources and sinks within the compulsion loop. That you can go off and create a different feature set or miniature compulsion loop that even works within the overall larger scale of compulsion loop. In the case here, publications, you can get celebrity level. Well, celebrity level does happen to be posted to your friends, and if you have a bunch of different friends, you get some sort of celebrity level of the game that encourages your friends to go in and ultimately apply their same actions within the compulsion loop. Does that make sense? So the third piece of kind of the core mechanics of Freemium, or fundamentals of Freemium, is the virtual economy. If you look, back up the compulsion loop, there's a lot of different things going on here. There's a lot of different places where transactions are taking place. Spending money to train your horse is a transaction. Training your horse and then ultimately applying a set of skills is a transaction. Activities that are based off those skills, in theory, are a transaction, and that also represents the economy. So when you think about the virtual economy of a freemium game, it's not just simply put that you have a Smurfberry shop and people are buying things for some reason, right? There's actually this whole deeper element to this. So it involves every transaction in the game, whatever it might be, applies to the virtual economy, whether it's a premium or secondary currency, or even if any monetary value is represented in the economy, simply sharing XP or earning or doing different things applies and affects it as considered part of the economy. So I'm going to step back and I'm going to let Jimmy talk a little bit about some of the specific top 10 freemium game mechanics as it relates to the fundamentals. So.
All right, like I said, thanks, Matt. These are the top 10 premium game mechanics, and not in any particular order. These are taken from, and what we're working on right now is known as the Recharge Studios Playbook. It's a document that we update frequently and add in what we think is that'll make it a Rockstar title and ultimately drive the most revenue. First thing that every game should have is a really good tutorial. We emphasize this quite heavily. You can lose users right away if you do not have a good tutorial. And each one of these steps either drives retention or monetization, sometimes both. See, this tutorial, for example, in Trade Nations, you show up to this village. What are you going to do there? You're going to build a cottage. Where's the cottage? Push this button down in the corner that's highlighted. This is the only thing you can buy is this cottage, so you can buy it. Now you want to buy a logging camp. So then the next thing that's highlighted is this tool to go to the store to build something, and then the logging camp would be highlighted. Just step by step, almost hand-holding to get through this. Sometimes it's good to offer a cancel button if your game is simple enough, but tutorials are imperative to have. The next thing that you really need in a freemium game is leveling and experience points. Some games don't have this. Like, let's say like Angry Birds doesn't have leveling or experience points. It's tough to make that a freemium game, but you could do it if you came up with the right mechanics. For example, here's which one was Tap 2. Every single action you perform in Tap 2 creates either virtual currency or experience points. Say I pick up a piece of trash here, boom, I got 4 experience points. I collect money from the walrus, boom, I get experience points. And now I level up. And the leveling up shows the user that they're getting somewhere. Let's say you're at a level 2, well, I go to the shop and I want to buy something that's level 3. Well, I got to get a level 3 in order to buy that. Now I'm at level 3, I can buy it. Yes. No, there's something I can buy at level 4. Crap, I got to get to level 4. I'm going to do all this stuff and try to get to level 4. It's kind of ingrained into a gamer's head that they have to get to the next level. This is a little bit more complicated as far as the back end would go, but offering a daily reward for users is something very simple in their mind that can bring them back every day. There's simple things as, show up, you're going to get a reward, or show up and you're going to get a bigger reward if you have a higher rating in your hotel or whatever you have going. This reward here from Godfinger just gives you 4 gold. You don't know why, I just gave it to you. This one here gives you, from Zoo Store, gives you 7,000 and some odd gold. I don't know why. It just said you won the bonus, the daily bonus. So I'm going to come back tomorrow and see what that is. This one's a little more structured. It shows that I've played 3 days consecutively, so I'm going to get a bigger bonus. And you can display these in very effective ways, saying, you're going to get this much this day, you're going to get this much the next day even. So the users know that they want to come back at least 5 days in a row and get the maximum reward. And in some cases, you can even spend virtual currency to preserve your consecutive days to keep that reward coming in case you miss a day. All right, DK. There are many things that you can accomplish by introducing decay into your game, and this also pushes a lot of syncing of your virtual currency. Users will, let's say, start a task and it's going to take 3 hours to finish. Well, they can finish it instantly by spending your premium virtual currency, like in Little Pirates here. I have a guy that went off to do a job and it's going to take him 3 days. Well, I can spend 3 dual balloons, or whatever you call it, to get him to come back right away. I get the reward right away, and I'm moving a lot quicker than I normally would have. And in Trade Nations, somebody's building a bookshop, and it's going to take 12 hours to do. Well, I can either wait that 12 hours, or I can spend 12 magic beans and have it happen instantly. Same thing with building rooms in Pet Hotel. I can wait 44 minutes, or I can spend 15 bones and get it done right away. So the essence of creating a time that you have to wait for something to happen creates this opportunity for monetization. A few games have what we call reward schedules, and that's where, let's say I finish a game of Gun Brothers. I have this Explodium right here that I want to, I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I'm going to spend it in the store, let's say. But there's an option here after the game where I can stick it in this little ball, wait 24 hours, and I'll have a return of 150%. Same thing in Little Pirates here. I have this little treasure island. I can go and bury this object that's worth 15 units, and it will be 65 units in 20 hours. So about it. And it's really good to have a notification in this place. Speaking of notifications, these are must-haves for any freemium game, especially when there's incentivized downloads, users would launch a game and then they quit. Launch a game and quit just to get their virtual currency. But if there's an alert saying, hey, you forgot to play the tutorial and earn this, this virtual currency in our game, come back and play it. Here's a couple examples, like your raspberries are ready to harvest, or your diner is losing popularity, come back and do this, and then like your crew member is back from doing something, come back in, and also indicating that you have something that's alerted in the game with these, the little notification things. That's people just look at those religiously. They'll look at their games folder even in the iOS and say, I got 4 alerts. I'm going to go in there. I'm going to see I have 4 different games with 1 alert. I'm going to go each one of these, finish everything off, and I'm done. The thing is, you don't want to alert too much though. We're getting Monster Park. It's in submission right now, and we had an alert that was coming off every, I think it was 2 minutes. And we realized that once a user exited the app, they get the alert instantly, and then they have to go back into it. And it's kind of almost a too soon type of alert. You want to let them, they may have been in the game for a minute and a half, and then they're getting an alert 5 seconds later if they return to it. So we took that alert out and created the next alert for a little bit further down the line, so not over alert them, because that may cause them to disable alerts for that application, and then you don't get anything from it. Disincentives. This also creates retention with the users. Creating let's say your farm bill, you grow your corn, and you have to come back and do something with it, otherwise it's going to wither and die. Same is true for even dolphin play. Looks like I haven't been back in a while. I have a dirty tank and my fisher tank. And in Monster Park, we have a similar mechanic where my monsters have died, but you can introduce, this is an option, or an opportunity to introduce a way to sink more money into the game. I can revive the monsters in this cage for $2 monster dollars. Some applications do not have the monetization opportunity there. They simply say you didn't come back. Well, that's too bad. Like in Godfinger, if this is a gold stack, grab it to get the gold and earn XP before it turns into worthless rust. Well, I've come back before and seen rust there, and I click it and it just goes away. I don't get anything. Well, they could. If you click it, have a window come up saying this gold has turned to rust. Spend 1 premium currency to revive it, and then all of a sudden you have another sink there, and that's a great opportunity to earn more anyway. Leaderboards are kind of essential in social games. If you don't have a leaderboard, you're almost not a social game. It's fairly easy to do once you have the network connectivity with other users and everything. And you really do want to specify that you want to have a friends leaderboard or a local leaderboard so you can compare with your friends. I have a lot of games right now, and I might have, I have 679 distance units that have flung a person in one of my games. Well, I'm leading my list here. I actually should have my own entry up here, but I don't. But if I click on the global list, I'm probably at the bottom 5% for distance. So I want to have this local list so I can compare with my friends. So I have those bragging rights. Very emotional. It's another thing ingrained into gamers' heads. If there's a leaderboard, I have to be in front of my friends. If I'm not, I'm going to go back. I'm going to play it until I am. And this is actually Monster Park. I forgot if I mentioned that. This is Monster Park's leaderboard, so I can toggle between global and my friends' leaderboard. Number 9, we have achievements. These are somewhat easy to place into games. No matter what type of game it is, you can have an achievement. Basically, do this thing 10 times, or do this rare thing, find this thing, do this 20 times, do this 30 times. Each one of those increments would be an achievement. And this is another thing ingrained into gamers' heads. If I have a question mark here that says, can you find the tire swing? I don't know, but I'm going to get 10 points if I do it, and I already did these things, and I have these two to finish. I'm going to go do it. I'm going to go online, I'm going to find out where the heck is this tire swing. Has anybody got this tire swing? It's creating, buzz, it's creating, things for you to do, even if you how did I miss that? What is it? I gotta go find this. Wrong way. All right, 10 is the modifiers. This is an opportunity for monetization. Let's see here. In Trade Nations, I built a wizard tower. Well, this wizard tower gives me the ability to boost production in like my wheat farm or my lumber yard, and I can spend standard currency, which I can earn easily through the game, or I can spend virtual or premium currency, which will boost production even more, and I can get an edge against my friends and get out ahead of them. In this example with Gun Brothers, I can spend a ton of virtual currency here to increase the speed of my character and ultimately get a better gun, but I can increase the speed of my character versus these standard currency guns that will increase the damage and speed of, or damage and RPM of the gun, but will reduce my speed by 20%. So the emphasis is definitely on the premium virtual currency. And that is 10 top 10 premium game cats. These are great things.
All right, cool. So we talked, a little bit about, the core game mechanics within a specific game. So, what happens now that you kind of understand, kind of the theory behind social media, mobile game, premium games, and you get kind of the core aspects of game components. Now what happens? Where can we actually build and grow this business? There's a lot of little tricks that we can use to increase retention, increase monetization, increase viral elements. I'm going to talk a little about viral, and we're going to go back into some of the business and actually how we determine how we grow the business. So here, this is actually a pretty standard game stack across the board. Regardless if it's mobile or console or whatever it may be. How do gamers decide what to buy? Ads, promotions, gaming reviews, all sub 15%. Word of mouth, 33%. But it doesn't matter if it's the next God of War console game or even mobile game in this case. Word of mouth is by far the best driver for increased eyeballs and installs. And obviously, with the emergence of social games and social mobile games, virality is a key component to doing this. So I'm going to talk a little bit about different ideas for driving viral game expansion. So interacting with friends in real time. Jimmy touched a little bit on this, but having the idea and the ability to go visit a friend's shop or virtual island or simulation component is essential to driving a viral component within your game. There's a couple of different theories behind this, and it really kind of turns back to the central human psyche. I don't know if has anybody heard of Jesse Shields? Or have you guys heard of the big video game guru Jesse Shields? He does a really cool thing. If you look at it online, it's just awesome. He's got a video online he did. I think it was a TED speech even. On just the human psyche of understanding and seeing somebody else's virtual playground, if you will, or virtual location, reinforces so many different things within the human psyche that it's almost unstoppable to generate virtual organic growth within that. And really, the whole idea is to, again, reinforce behavior through viewing other people's actions. It's the whole idea of if my neighbor bought a new car and I need to buy a new car, and again, keeping that whole component alive within a social game environment or a freemium game environment is essential. So reinforced social sharing is another piece of that. Obviously, most of us probably have a Facebook account. Being able to share different components of different actions, achievements, leaderboard components are all essential to viral gaming components within freemium games. The more components, there are times that you can share elements within Twitter, within Facebook, within internal social game environments, even if you're familiar with OpenFaint, plus, some of these different social game environments that are specific to mobile are extremely successful because it allows people to share information in and outside of the game. Envy is probably the biggest piece in driving personality component to a lot of what viral games strategies are. So if you think about, if you can develop a mechanic or develop a feature set that really hits home on the envy component, if you can help a user feel envious or make another of their friends users feel envious about an action or achievement or whatever it may be, chances are that's going to be a pretty big viral driver for your component. So allow, again, envy to happen, give the ability for your users to brag. Gifting is a positive portion of this, really. Reinforcing user behavior helps drive the economy and drives interaction retention. If I can share with Jimmy that, hey, here's a fish, well, hey, I might probably encourage him to utilize that fish within his game. But then he's also probably likely to send that back to me, or he's likely to send some virtual goods or whatever it might be to another person out of good faith. And reinforcing this whole gifting and sharing component, again, really drives home both monetization and retention and further interaction. One thing actually with gifting, it's pretty common now and increasingly so, I guess, is gifting to non-players. Right? If I give a fish to a friend of a player, a friend of mine that's connected in some social network but isn't necessarily a player, that's a huge component. And maybe if I'm incentivized to share, and if that non-playing user actually joins the game, I get an additional gift myself. Well, that's a pretty big incentivization for actually virtual sharing and file sharing. And then the whole idea of companion gaming is a big aspect of the viral component. People want to feel like they're playing and unlocking levels together, experiencing things together, so they can talk about it later on and share it with their friends. Maybe they unlock something that's new within the game that they can then share via Facebook posts or viral posts or whatever it might be inside of their game. That's going to help increase awareness. Providing the framework for users to be able to do that is certainly key. So back to business a little bit. There's the idea within freemium games, and we talked a little bit about it, is the idea of having an actual business, right? You're talking about living, breathing business within this product or this application. And it doesn't suffice just to simply put a game out there. You're not, if you're Atari, 20 years ago or 25 years ago, and you put a game title out in the marketplace, and you build a game, you said, forget it. That's typically what games have been out until 3-4 years ago, really. And freemium games have emerged. But post-launch strategies are an essential element to any freemium game product. And the idea is that it's not just about launching a product and hoping that you can get things, because there's always opportunities to optimize. And optimization is the biggest key here in being able to develop an ongoing product and developing a continually profitable product. So pieces within the post-launch strategies. Within mobile specifically, there's an interesting, trend to do a beta launch in Canada. And a lot of people, sorry, I think there's from Canada here, but say the beta testers are in Canada, we love them all. But the idea really is throw an application up in Canada, let it launch, let it bake, understand user behavior, again, because it's relative to US, or the user behavior is certainly applicable. And you can understand what's going on within your application without actually doing a full US launch. This has proved very successful. All of our recharge styles are most likely going to have a beta launch in Canada. And for, I would say, the large majority of effective social freemium iOS titles, and most likely Android coming soon, have launched in Canada as a beta launch. But the idea with the beta launch is test, measure, and revise, and really understand and put in place the ability to track all the different components within your application to truly understand user behaviors, so that again you can later on optimize and have the ability to balance. Now, the interesting and important part of that is actually provide the ability to balance on the fly. You don't want to actually go and resubmit an application. You don't want to have to have all users installing an application. So you want to build a backend that's scalable enough and flexible enough so you can balance on the fly. That's changing content, it's changing economies, whatever it might be. Another important part of the beta launchers are planning for it. You know, even with recharge, we learned this a little bit. We really need to plan and give us enough time for that beta launch so that we can optimize before we make a big market push. And that's certainly something that's valuable when going to a beta launch. The next post-launch strategy is developing what we call a dynamic content schedule. You know, what are the new features, what are the new content, what are the new pieces that are going to be introduced to users as the application expands. And furthermore, as you look to optimize the application, what types of things are you going to do? You can introduce storylines, characters, and levels. You can add new features, but need to be carefully introduced. And you know, adding new features versus adding new content can certainly introduce a whole new complexity to the applications. Carefully calculate level progressions or something you know, that we talk about, and it's called the whales. And the idea behind tailoring to the whales and calculating to the whales is there's a very small amount of actual paying users in mobile freemium games right now. We're talking 1 to 2%. So 99 or 98% of the users that are downloading freemium games right now are typically non-paying users. Now, if you're lucky, you get up to 5%. But for those people that are paying, the quote-unquote whales, they're spending a lot of money. You need to be able to carefully calculate how you're going to attract those paying users and how you're going to continue the interactivity with those paying users over time. So, new content equals more money from the whales. It's certainly something to pay attention to when you're updating content. I like what virual does too. You know, they actually have kind of a messaging platform. Every time you load a new game, or every time you load a game, if there's new content, they message users that there's new content. They put some branding behind it. It makes it a lot of fun. I think it's pretty dang cool. Dynamic game balancing, very, very important. Again, you know, it's part of a critical part of post-launch strategy. Also, a critical part of understanding what's going on with the user base to be able to do this stuff on the fly. Key important pieces here is doing small tests. You don't want to, disrupt an economy so bad that you don't have that controlled test environment that you can really make impactful changes to. Tweaking a small component or small, balancing on the back end, whether it's adjusting the rate of XP consumption by 2% might be a good change to make, but completely introducing or quadrupling or doubling multiple economic factors within the game are going to be pretty devastating, and it's not going to really give you a lot of insight as to what's effective versus what's not. And let the data speak for itself. Don't make any assumptions. There's a lot of tools out there. There's a lot of opportunities to be able to understand and analyze the data within the consumption data within each application. Don't overlook and don't underestimate the use of the effectiveness of the data. And then focus first on the rate of play. And what that really means is look closely at how fast people are kind of progressing through the game. There's a very fine balance for successful freemium mobile games right now where users don't progress so fast that they get burnt out. They don't go and progress too slow to the point that they just get bored and they walk away. It's very easy for that to happen. So it's a very important part to focus on the rate of play as users typically progress through the application. And then be careful of giving away too much. I think there's a lot of typical game developers who are coming from the traditional game development community. There's always this idea of the more features, the better. Everything else is great. Let's just give it. And there's the assumption that the more that you give the users, the more they're going to be happy. Well, it's probably true in a premium environment. The cooler you can make the game, the higher rating IGN is going to give you when they pull it out of the box. Not the case with freemium. Slowly introducing features, slowly introducing content over the lifetime of a user's experience is going to be more impactful versus giving it to them all at the same time. All up in front. Makes sense? Tutorial optimization. Jimmy talked about right now of having tutorial be a main focus to building successful games. But it's a very important post-launch strategy is to not just look at everything happening after users in the applications, look to see how they are actually introduced to the game. And it's something post-launch that continually needs to be watched and continually be tweaked. Spend 50% of the time actually focus on making the tutorial more effective versus all 50% of everything else. Most people are looking at, let's add 5,000 to an application when not spending 1% of the time looking at the tutorial when you've got 90% of the users falling off after the first run of the application. That's not effective. Spending time with the tutorial is going to be more valuable out of the gate and post-launch. Tutorial can be long tail, and what I mean by that is just that tutorial isn't something that you simply do once and it takes you a few seconds to do within an application, within a game. It's actually something that can be a very long time. It can take you 4, 5, or 10 days. It can take you 20 weeks, depending on the type of application. Again, the idea is to slowly introduce, and I shouldn't say slowly, methodically introduce different features and core functions of your game and your application so that a user can be effectively educated as to how to play that game. If they're overloaded with features and they don't understand, they get quickly confused and walk away. However, if there's not enough for them to do in the application, it's not studying enough. So it's the idea of effective education versus fluid gameplay is very important. One thing in here that is not mentioned in the tutorial optimization is a big success factor into
You're talking about the tutorial, but isn't that targeting like the bell curve, the center curve? You're going to have these extreme players that want much quicker, and some others that want really simpler.
Yeah.
Is how do you address those things?
It's a lot of looking at the data that's provided, right? If you notice that users are spending a certain amount of currency or taking a certain amount of action throughout the tutorial to quickly progress through, but those same users are also continuing on. And what you don't want to have happen is a user group to quickly progress through the tutorial and drop off after that because they don't know what that could do. Right? So it's understanding what those users are doing and then try to segment those users and defining kind of the best path they can take to that.
I think there's a discipline as well in game design, especially in the early game, that we talk a little bit about limiting options for the player. I think regardless of the player, you kind of have to spoon feed them each step to a certain point. And I think the art is how far does that tutorial go, and when do you actually when does that player actually get more freedom to mess around. But I do think that regardless of the player, there's the bell curve, but I would say for everybody, you should go through the same tutorial, have your hand held for a certain amount of time before we let you go and fall.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that. The idea again is effective education, really no matter who it is, right? You're not going to get a long-term user by allowing them to, cancel out of the first screen of the application if there's enough material that they have to learn. Now, if it's a match-3 game where you're typically used to knowing how to make that, knowing how to play the game, well, you don't really need to educate the user how to play match-3. So it's a give and take. There's an art to it. It's not, there's this art and science piece of this whole thing. Understanding user activity is a science, but really also understanding the artistic elements of it as well.
So Matt, isn't one of the ways you address that is through missions? So people basically pace themselves at their own comfort level.
So that's one of the
you
things.
train them on the basics and then let them take
Usually let them choose what mission they want.
Yeah, and that's an example of what a long tail tutorial could be, right? If the mission, like Ryan mentioned, is at level 10 suddenly a whole new feature is being introduced. Is that a tutorial, or is that, in some cases, that could be considered both, right? So the ongoing education, introducing new content, introducing new features, really is a key aspect to both the tutorial and the external game.
Some people are locking features until you get further in the game because decide the mission.
I suppose you could always market a new version of the same game, different, Angry Birds Maximum or something like that.
Yeah, it really depends on what your market strategy is. Some people just take, the same exact, game engine and port it over to new content with the same exact, environment, the same exact economy, just different characters. Certainly something that can happen. But yeah, so some of the thing about how you actually, really the idea is introducing and educating the user effectively at different stages of the game. And then something called the evolving GDD. Now, GDD stands for Game Design Document, and it's something that's very important in developing games from console to mobile, whatever it might be. But the idea is that you don't ever have this kind of final GDD. You go to this, you go through this whole production process, and you have a gold master, and it's done. Again, the post-launch strategy here is to have an evolving GDD where you continually making updates, you're continually optimizing, and you're continually challenging what's going on inside the game. So continual updates keep the user engaged. That's very helpful. Again, specifically with the whales. Game depth changes over time. Think about how different features can apply to the depth of the game, the experience of the game. You make it better or worse. Stay focused, strategy and theme. You never want to go so far off of your application that you completely disinterest your users. If you have a fish game, you don't want to be introducing machine guns and exploding trucks at level 26. It's certainly not something that's valuable. And changes in economy and structure need to pay special attention. And what this really all means is that you can add content, you can manipulate the functions and features, but when you start disrupting the economy is when you really start kind of breaking or potentially adding seams and threads into what keeps the economy rolling within the game. If you add a new feature that suddenly allows a certain segment of users to quadruple their XP at a 10% rate versus other segments of users, there's things there that you don't want that to happen because those could break. Similar to the economy today. But user acquisition is something I want to talk about. So that's post-launch strategies. User acquisition is key in a freemium business, regardless if it's games or not. But having effective means of user acquisition means effective eyeballs, which means it's something that's measurable within the product cycle. So if you look at different types of user acquisition in mobile today, we've got CPI, cost per install. You can literally go and pay somebody like W3 in some cases, to have you install an application for you. There's CPC and CPM. Banner placement is just like an online banner network that you would be familiar with online. Barter installs are an opportunity. Go off and, if you got 4 or 5 friends in the industry, go off and allow them to promote your game. They promote you promote their game. It's a good way to allow growth. Within your application. Pre-launch awareness. This is PR. Trying to seed the industry a little bit. Going out to blog sites, social media sites, review sites, contacting everybody in the industry. Try to see the market with the launch, similar to what a traditional kind of game launch would be. Show features, show screenshots, things like that. Really build that awareness before you go to market. Something that's kind of unique within mobile is Apple and Google features. There's a high rotation of different features or applications that they feature within the marketplace. And if you're able to position yourself well enough, you have a good enough game, typically you'll get picked up with an Apple. It's a great way to drive user acquisition. And there's lots of different aspects to that. And then operating features, just really get featured by Verizon, featured by AT&T, or whatever it may be, to show off a new device, or pre-install if you get pre-install on 20,000 of the new Razr, whatever it may be in your iPhone. It's certainly beneficial for you to generate awareness and drive user acquisition. There's different pricing models that really happen. PPI, display, search, different things here with different cost structures and different benefits. The idea is it's not one size fits all. There's lots of different sources for distribution. Some are more effective than others. Some are more costly than others. The idea is to truly understand what the value is for each channel that you acquire users at, and what the lifetime value is within the users that you experience, that you acquire. User acquisition in mobile is kind of interesting, specifically on iOS, not so much on Android because the rate at which applications are ranked is a little bit different. The algorithm being used to rank them in deck. But there's something called organic rates and organic lifts, and the idea behind that is essentially the same as we walk into a supermarket. If there's a box of Cheerios at a eye level versus the multi-meal at the bottom, you're probably going to pick the Cheerios. Same thing here with an iOS, right? If you see the top 25 applications on iOS, most likely users more often than not are going to download the applications that are right there in front of them. That's those types of users are considered organic, meaning that they just went to the App Store and they want to download something. They saw the top 25, they picked the icon that they probably liked the most. So one effective means for user acquisition is doing something called burst, which is represented here. We'll talk a little bit about some of the requirements. But doing different bursts allows you to skyrocket to the top of the application deck, or the iTunes deck, or even Android, you know what it is, and allows you to acquire more users based on the organic rates. And that effectively brings your cost per install down. The overall user acquisition costs go down for the amount of install. This is a pattern that we use for Dolphin Play. It's pretty unique. We did 3 different what we call burst campaigns. Drove ourselves up to the top of the deck by acquiring enough users at a CPI and CPC basis. We got enough installs that you're up to the top 20, well, I think we got to top 7, I think, in a couple cases. You know, I guess it's a high deck placement where users just go in and say, well, I like that Dolphin, I download and install. So, you know, there are some requirements, and we won't talk too much about this, but there are requirements within each storefront, whether it be Apple or Android storefront, to acquire a certain amount of installs to do those burst campaigns. Again, something very effective in the current state of mobile. And then monetization. So we talked about building a game, we talked about acquiring users. Now, how do we actually get people to pay? There's lots of different payment options within the freemium business model. In-app purchase is probably the biggest right now. We talked at the very beginning about the openness of in-app purchase that allows users to make microtransactions within a game for you know, either exchange for virtual good or for virtual currency, whatever it may be. And that's probably the most effective means of monetization to date. Subscription models actually used to be really popular in the old days, I should say the old days, 6-7 years ago, of mobile games, mobile applications, but primarily for the reason people would download them and not realize that they had a subscription. Utility charged every month. But certainly something to think about as you have free subscriptions. Maybe you get a subscription in your virtual aquarium to access a special dolphin, and you have to pay 25 cents to have that dolphin in your tank every month. Certainly an opportunity. Ads, there's a lot of opportunities for mobile right now to have ad placements in Freemium. There's lots of unique ways and new opportunities and new business ideas on how to show ads and how to increase awareness for other products within that. People are paying money to do that. And really, right now, typically, banner ads are probably the primary source of ad revenue. Interactive banners are starting to become pretty popular. Full screen, interstitial ads, interactive elements, video pre-roll, post-roll are starting to drive some revenue. Not significant, but certainly are there. And then incentivized action. So really, installing an application in exchange for virtual currency, something that's very popular and very effective, both for monetization and for app distribution. And then alternative offers in lead gen. I'm sure you guys have download an application or take a quiz or sign up for Netflix or whatever it is. That type of stuff is on mobile now. You can sign up for a Netflix account. If you do that, you get access to X amount of currency. Although from a monetization perspective, not as profitable as something like an app incentivize itself, but certainly there is certainly an opportunity for monetization. A couple key things within the different life cycles of each product. Sales cycles are extremely popular in mobile. Not only helps drive distribution or re-engagement, but it also helps drive monetization. I think if I'm alerted to say, I can go and spend half the amount of money of real currency for the same amount of premium currency within the game, I'm more likely to re-engage that application and then also spend money in the application. So it gives another way for you to target users and re-engage users, then also helps drive revenue with the obvious reasons that currency or virtual goods are cheaper. So analytics and measurement, we don't have a whole lot more time here, but I'm going to try to talk a little bit about this. It's a very essential piece of freemium games. And the idea is that it all kind of comes down to one thing, and it's lifetime value. If you don't know the lifetime value of the users that you acquire, i.e. the amount of money that you're acquiring to use your app, it's very hard to determine how effective and how profitable your application is. So if you know that if you acquire a user on average for 21 cents, but their lifetime value is 20 cents, meaning that for every user you acquire, you're making 20 cents out of the user, you're losing a cent per user. there's everything else. You know, there's tracking engagement, what's actually happening within the application. There's tracking consumption patterns, which is really understanding what people are doing in the economy as it relates to the economy, so that you can make changes to optimize that. Funnel tracking, understanding where people are essentially dropping off, really truly understanding the pitfalls. You know that 50% of users are dropping off after level 5. Well, something's probably happening at level 5. Conversion, and then there's multiple tools out there that are becoming increasingly popular to analyze a lot of these different things. And then cohort analysis. I want to talk a little bit about cohort analysis because it's something that's pretty important here. And it's really understanding and putting different segments and understanding the usage pattern of these different segments. So really all this ultimately means is, you know, if you acquire a group of users in April, you know, likely the application state, the instance of the application is certain that you can track the engagement over time based on a specific cohort versus by May, which maybe you did an update in May, which tweaks the economy a little bit, and you can start to track specifically over time what those updates might have done. That's, you know, at a real high level of what cohort analysis is. But again, it's really truly understanding those different segments and how they're moving through your application and what effects have. So I think that's it. We're about 7:05. Do you have any questions? Sure.
Bitcoin. Have you addressed that possibility of using that as a monetary?
Bitcoin?
Yes. Have you heard of it?
No.
It's desktop, right?
Is it desktop?
Bitcoin is a virtual economy that somebody is using to actually generate real income. And you can purchase it with real money. You can try to generate it. However, right now, economies of scale are not conducive to that. You probably spend more in electricity than you would in gaining Bitcoin. But it's a real thing. And right now, it's like trading at like $7 per Bitcoin in real currency, where it used to be $1 per Bitcoin not that long ago. Check it out. Just do a Google on it and see.
So is it just any virtual element, or is it actually include real time? So I go for.
I don't know the specifics of it, but it's a computational means of computing a token such that it cannot be duplicated or counterfeited, and it becomes a real economy that you can trade real income for.
I don't know if Apple will allow that, given that it's comparable to a real currency. I think it's only desktop based right now too. Because that's all generated like a Bitcoin server. It's like algorithmically generated. Can you do it on?
You can send it to any address. I mean,
So you can trade the money. Are you saying like spend the money on it?
Yes. To spend or use that as your
It's a
micropayment kind of thing. I don't know.
platform agnostic virtual currency.
Right, exactly.
Big or bit?
Bit.
Bit.
Yes.
That's interesting. Yeah, if actually Jesse Shields, who I mentioned, has just an awesome talk. He talks a little bit about, you know, kind of the idea of having, you know, all of a sudden these virtual, you know, currencies with weird incentive schemes. You know, like suddenly, instead of driving yourself to work, you take the bus. You get 2 points for that. You know, and you can spend those coins at the bar. You know, I mean, it's all these different things that, you know, users are being incentivized based on, you know, a pseudo game environment, really, virtual economy to support the case. But that's interesting. But no, I'll look into it. It's cool. Any other questions?
so one thing I've thought about is how a lot of these games have their built-in virtual currency. Okay, so say take like virual, City, you know, they've got multiple games. They don't have a back-end management of that funds. So if I spend $20 to buy some virual, whatever the bucks, I can take that money and if I decide I'm not going to play virual anymore, I can apply it to City.
Sure. So kind of a mediation economy almost. That's starting to happen right now on Android a little bit, where it's not so much on iOS because the billing mechanism isn't as open. But on Android right now, there's companies called Paya and G-Core with their mobile game platform. They're starting to do this as well, where essentially if you're part of the network also includes a social network. It also includes you know, a ad service as well. But ultimately, where you can acquire quote unquote premium currency that sits over top of and surrounds all the different applications within that environment, within this economy. So yes, it's starting to happen already. It's actually proven to be pretty dang successful. We'll see what happens in the next couple of years. But I would imagine this types of things take off. Any other questions?
How much of this stuff applies to just freemium apps?
You know, it still applies, I think, to the extent that an application can support an economy structure. I mean, typically, you know, freemium in the truest sense is really more kind of this virtual economy element. But there's other applications. I mean, you'll get utility applications out there where, you know, maybe it's a map application. You want to suddenly, you know, maybe U.S. territories come free if you want to, you know, buy other territories for in-app purchase or for different premium currency. That's something that can happen. I think, I mean, it's very popular. You know, in-app purchases specifically are becoming more and more prevalent, more and more accepted with user bases beyond just gaming environments. But in the truest sense, it's not really freemium, but you can still be considered that.
It's really, if you can make any kind of app, you can have some kind of economy that's really should be your goal.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
That'll make you take it. That'll make you have the best success, essentially.
Yeah.
Because then you get the coming back, and the things like, say, map, well, okay, download Europe, okay, I mean, now you're done here, there's no reason to come back again.
Yeah, I would say if you add, you know, big terms of gamification, if you add gamification elements to a utility application, you could easily, that was free, it had its own economy. In theory, you know, you could pretty much create an environment for a freemium, freemium.
Yeah.
So, any other questions, guys? Well, thank you.
All right. All right. Thanks everybody for coming out. That's it.
Thank you. What's the next one? I don't know.
We don't know yet.